The dragon is humanity's most universal monster. From the frozen fjords of Scandinavia to the rice paddies of China, from the ziggurats of Babylon to the pyramids of Mesoamerica, every civilization has gazed upon the unknown and seen the serpent. These are not mere beasts. They are cosmic forces, primordial chaos given form, the living embodiment of nature's most terrifying aspects, the destructive storm, the crushing depths of the ocean, the all-consuming fire, and the inevitability of death itself. This chronicle catalogues over 50 distinct dragon traditions, organized by their fundamental nature. We begin with the cosmic dragons, beings so immense they define the very structure of reality. From there, we descend to the primordial creators, the first beings whose bodies became the world. Next come the divine serpents, dragons elevated to godhood in their respective pantheons. Then, we encounter the great antagonists, the legendary monsters whose defeat defined heroes and nations. We examine the guardian dragons, both benevolent and terrible, who protect treasures and sacred places. Finally, we explore the regional variants, the local worms and wyverns that haunted specific landscapes. Each dragon reveals something essential about the culture that created it, a window into humanity's eternal struggle with the monstrous unknown. The greatest dragons transcend mere monstrosity. They are fundamental forces woven into the fabric of existence itself. These beings encircle worlds, gnaw at the roots of reality, and herald the end of all things. They cannot be fought with swords alone, for they are fate itself, made flesh and scale. Born to Loki and the giantess Angaboda, Jörmungandr was one of 3 monstrous children prophesied to bring Ragnarök. Odin hurled the young serpent into the ocean, but this exile backfired catastrophically. The serpent grew so massive it encircled the entire world, tail clenched in its own jaws, becoming the living Ouroboros. When it shifted in sleep, tsunamis ravaged coastlines. When it exhaled, poisonous mists rolled across waves. Its scales were large as shields, harder than forged steel. Thor was its destined nemesis. They met 3 times. First, when Thor went fishing using an ox head as bait, nearly catching it before the giant Hymir cut the line in terror. Second, when Thor, disguised, visited the giant King Utgard the Loki, who challenged him to lift a cat. Thor managed to raise one paw off the ground, not knowing the cat was Jörmungandr in disguise. The king revealed that Thor had nearly pulled the world's serpent from the ocean floor, an impossible feat that terrified even giants. Their third meeting would be their last. At Ragnarök, when the serpent finally released its tail and rose from the ocean, the world would flood. Thor would face Jörmungandr in final combat. The god would slay the serpent with Mjolnir, but the serpent's dying act would be to drown Thor in a flood of venom. They would kill each other, fulfilling the ancient prophecy. Jörmungandr represents fate itself, an inevitable doom that cannot be escaped, only delayed. It is the boundary between the known world and chaos beyond. While Jörmungandr encircled the world of the living, Níðhöggr gnawed at existence itself, This dragon dwelled at Yggdrasil's roots in Niflheim, the primordial realm of ice and mist. His name means the malice striker or curse striker, and his purpose was pure entropy. He spent eternity chewing the world tree's foundation, specifically the root above the spring Virgilmere, from which all rivers flowed. With each bite, he hastened Ragnarök, working to collapse reality itself. This was not hunger, but cosmic malice, the desire to unmake creation. But roots weren't his only sustenance. Níðhöggr was also the devourer of the dishonored dead. The corpses of oathbreakers, murderers, and adulterers were sent to Nastrand, the shore of corpses, a hall of punishment in Niflheim. Here, Níðhöggr would chew on their bodies for eternity, sucking the blood from their remains. This dual role as both cosmic destroyer and infernal punisher made him one of the most feared beings in Norse cosmology. A massive black serpent with powerful wings, he exchanged eternal insults with the eagle atop Yggdrasil via Ratatoskr the squirrel. This feud represented the vertical axis of the cosmos, the opposition between heaven's heights and the underworld's depths. At Ragnarök's end, after the world's destruction, and even its phoenix-like rebirth, Níðhöggr survives. He flies away with corpses in his claws, eternal and unchanged. He is entropy itself, and entropy cannot be destroyed. Of all Norse monsters, he is perhaps the most terrifying. Pure degradation that outlasts even gods. The image appears across cultures, a serpent or dragon swallowing its own tail, forming a perfect circle. In ancient Egypt, the Ouroboros represented the sun's journey through the underworld, emerging renewed each dawn. Greek alchemists adopted it as a symbol of the eternal cycle of destruction and creation, the unity of all things. In Gnosticism, it represented the boundary between the material world and the spiritual realm beyond. The Ouroboros is less a specific dragon and more a cosmic concept made reptilian. It represents infinity, the eternal return, the idea that all endings are beginnings. It consumes itself and is reborn from itself continuously. Time is circular, not linear. Death feeds, life feeds death. The serpent's body has no beginning and no end. It is Alpha and Omega, the first and last, perfectly self-contained. In Norse mythology, Jörmungandr embodies this principle literally, holding the ocean in place through self-consumption. When it releases its tail, linear time resumes and Ragnarök begins. The world as we know it can only exist while the serpent maintains its circular form. The Ouroboros thus represents stasis versus change, order versus chaos. It is the dragon as cosmic principle rather than individual creature, the mythological made mathematical. This cosmic function appears in other traditions too. The Hindu Shesha Naga coils beneath Vishnu in eternal cycles of creation and dissolution. The Chinese dragon chasing the pearl represents the pursuit of wisdom and enlightenment in eternal cycles. The Ouroboros is humanity's oldest dragon image, predating civilizations, a recognition that existence itself might be serpentine, might devour itself, might have no true beginning or end. before the cosmic dragons came the dragons of creation itself. These beings existed in the chaos before the world, and their bodies, their blood, their very substance became the earth, sky, and sea. They are not destroyers, but the destroyed, the sacrificed mothers and fathers whose death gave birth to everything. In Babylonian creation mythology, before heaven and earth existed, there were two primordial beings, Apsu, the freshwater deep, and Tiamat, the saltwater ocean. Their waters mingled, and from their union the gods were born. But the younger gods were noisy and chaotic, disturbing the ancient couple's rest. Apsu plotted to destroy his children. Tiamat initially resisted, but when the god killed Apsu in self-defense, grief and rage transformed her from mother to monster. Tiamat's transformation was physical and terrible. She took the form of a massive serpentine dragon with legs, horns, and wings, a composite creature embodying all of chaos's terror. She created an army of monsters, serpents with venom for blood, storm demons, dragon men, lion demons, scorpion men, and fish men. She bore 11 types of monsters in total. At their head, she placed the god Kingu, her new consort, and gave him the tablet of destinies, which controlled the fates of all things. The young gods cowered before her army. Only Marduk, storm god of Babylon, dared to face her. He demanded supremacy over all gods as payment. When Tiamat opened her jaws to devour him, Marduk sent forth the 4 winds, which held her mouth open. He shot an arrow into her belly, piercing her heart. From her corpse, he created the universe. Her upper body became the heavens, her lower body the earth. Her tears formed the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Her eyes became the sources of the rivers. Her tail became the Milky Way. Her breasts became mountains. Her spittle became clouds and mist. Every part of creation was once part of Tiamat's body. Tiamat represents the primal chaos that must be conquered for civilization to exist, the mother whose body becomes the world. She is simultaneously the most nurturing and most terrifying of dragons. We live within her corpse. In ancient Egypt, before creation itself, there existed only none, the primordial waters of chaos. From this chaos, the god Ra emerged, bringing light, order, and creation. But chaos was not destroyed. It took physical form as Apep, also called Apophis, the great serpent of darkness. Apep was the antithesis of creation, a being whose sole purpose was to unmake Ra's work and return the universe to primordial void. Each night, as Ra sailed through the Duet, the underworld in his solar bark, Apep waited in ambush. The serpent was impossibly vast, its coils filling the underworld river. Its roar could shake the foundations of reality. When it attacked Ra's boat, solar eclipses occurred in the world above, moments when chaos nearly triumphed. The serpent's primary weapon was its hypnotic gaze, powerful enough to paralyze even gods. It would coil around the solar bark and attempt to swallow Ra whole. Only the god set, standing at the prow, could fight it back, spearing the serpent night after night. Egyptian priests performed daily rituals to weaken Apep, chanting spells, drawing images of the serpent, and destroying them. and writing its name in red ink to bind it. These rituals were not symbolic, but considered magically essential. If the priests failed in their duties, Ra might not survive the night, and the sun would never rise again. Unlike gods who could die and be resurrected, Apep could never truly be killed, only wounded and driven back. It was eternal chaos, a force that existed before creation and would exist after. Every sunrise was proof that Ra had survived another night. Every sunset was a reminder that the battle would begin again. Apep represents the fundamental fragility of order, the constant vigilance required to maintain civilization against the ever-present forces of dissolution. It is the dragon as existential threat, the void that hungers to consume all light. Not all dragons are monsters to be slain. In many traditions, dragons are gods themselves, or at minimum divine servants of the highest order. These celestial serpents control weather, guard paradises, and shape the fates of nations. They are worshipped, not hunted, and their favor determines the prosperity or ruin of entire civilizations. Chinese dragons were not the malevolent beasts of the West, but celestial beings of wisdom and power. Shenlong, the spirit dragon, controlled weather and rain. His massive body, covered in azure scales, could stretch across entire provinces. He had the horns of a stag, the head of a camel, eyes of a rabbit, neck of a snake, belly of a clam, scales of a carp, claws of an eagle, and paws of a tiger. This composite form represented his mastery over all elements, a perfect synthesis of land, sea, and sky. Shenlong lived in the clouds and created rain by breathing out water vapor. His movement through the heavens shaped the weather patterns that determined harvest success or failure. When angered by disrespect or improper worship, he would withhold rain, causing drought that could kill thousands. When furious, he would send floods and hurricanes that devastated entire regions. Chinese emperors performed elaborate rituals to maintain Shenlong's favor, as the agricultural cycle depended entirely on his benevolence. Unlike Western dragons that hoarded gold, Shenlong hoarded wisdom and controlled the essential gift of water. Rain was the dragon's blessing, the physical manifestation of divine approval. Farmers would erect shrines to Shenlong at field edges, leaving offerings of rice wine, incense, and prayers. The dragon was not evil or good in human terms, but operated according to cosmic principles of balance and respect. Proper veneration ensured harmony, neglect invited disaster. While Shenlong governed weather, Tianlong's domain was purely spiritual and cosmic. The celestial dragon served as guardian of the heavens and personal protector of the gods themselves. He pulled the chariots of the gods across the sky and guarded the celestial palaces from demons and malevolent spirits. His scales gleamed with starlight, and his eyes saw through all illusions and deceptions. The connection between Tianlong and the emperor was direct and absolute. The emperor's throne was called the Dragon Throne, and the emperor himself was considered the earthly incarnation of the dragon's authority. To rebel against the emperor was to rebel against Tianlong and the cosmic order itself. The dragon's 5-clawed form was reserved exclusively for imperial use. Anyone else displaying a 5-clawed dragon committed treason punishable by death. Tianlong represented the divine right of kings made manifest. The emperor was not merely chosen by dragons, but was the dragon in human form. Imperial robes displayed dragons coiling around the fabric, the emperor's body becoming the dragon's body. When the emperor spoke, it was the dragon's voice issuing commands. This conflation of ruler and dragon created a political theology where dissent was not just illegal, but cosmically wrong, a violation of heaven's structure. Beneath Shenlong's clouds and Tianlong's heavens coiled Dailong, the earth dragon. While his brothers ruled sky and spirit, Dailong commanded the depths beneath. He controlled rivers, streams, and underground waterways. He was the dragon of minerals and metals, of hidden veins of gold and jade deep within mountains. Earthquakes occurred when Dailong shifted in his subterranean lair, and landslides came when he moved through underground tunnels. Miners and geomancers paid particular respect to Dailong. Before digging a mine or breaking ground for a building's foundation, rituals were performed to ask permission from the earth dragon. Feng Shui, the art of harmonious placement, was fundamentally about not disturbing Dailong's body, which was the earth itself. To build in the wrong location was to drive stakes into the dragon's flesh, inviting catastrophe. Dailong's domain intersected with ancestor worship, as the dead were buried in earth, and thus entered his realm. The dragon was guardian of graves and protector of the deceased. Proper burial, according to Feng Shui principles, ensured ancestors rested peacefully within Dailong's care. Improper burial angered both ancestors and the dragon, causing misfortune for living descendants. Even deeper than Dailong's domain lay the realm of Fjords, the underworld dragon or treasure dragon. This dragon lived in the deepest subterranean caverns, where he guarded buried treasures and precious minerals still forming in the earth's depths. Volcanoes erupted when Fjords burst forth to heaven to report to the celestial gods, his emergence creating fissures through which magma escaped. Fjords' relationship with treasure was more complex than Western dragons' hoarding. He didn't collect treasure, but protected it in its natural state, ensuring humans didn't plunder the earth too greedily. When miners found rich veins of gold or silver, they had discovered Fjords' treasury. Taking too much too quickly would anger the dragon, causing cave-ins and floods. Sustainable mining required respecting the dragon's ownership and taking only what was needed. This dragon embodied Chinese philosophy about humanity's relationship with nature. The earth's wealth was not unlimited, not freely available for exploitation. It belonged to Fjords, and humans were merely borrowing from the dragon's hoard. Every jewel extracted, every precious metal mined, created a debt that must be repaid through proper respect and sustainable practices. Fjords was the dragon of ecological balance, the reminder that the earth's bounty has a guardian who remembers every theft. Ruling the 4 seas that bounded China were the 4 dragon kings, brothers who commanded their respective domains with absolute authority. Guang ruled the East Sea, the most powerful of the 4, his palace a marvel of coral and pearl in the depths near the Yangtze River's mouth. Qin commanded the South Sea, his domain the warm waters where typhoons were born. Run controlled the West Sea, the distant waters beyond the deserts. Shun governed the North Sea, the cold, dark waters at the world's edge. Each dragon king commanded armies of aquatic creatures, fish soldiers, crab generals, shrimp warriors, and turtle ministers. They controlled their domains, whether summoning or suppressing storms at will. They were bureaucratic deities, maintaining order in their realms and reporting to the Jade Emperor. They could take human form and often interacted with mortals, sometimes benevolently, sometimes demanding tribute. Guang appears in Journey to the West, where the Monkey King's son, Wukong, invaded his underwater palace, demanding a weapon worthy of his strength. The Dragon King offered various weapons, but none satisfied the monkey until he noticed the Rui Jingubang, a massive iron pillar used to measure ocean depths. When Wukong lifted the 17,960-pound staff effortlessly, Guang reluctantly gifted it to him. This staff became Wukong's signature weapon, capable of changing size and weight at will. The Dragon Kings were not villains, but stern authority figures. Proper respect and offerings ensured safe passage for sailors and fishermen. Disrespect brought storms and shipwrecks. Coastal communities maintained Dragon King temples, performing seasonal festivals to ensure their continued favor. The Dragon Kings represented the sea's dual nature, provider of fish and trade routes, but also bringer of storms and drowning. To live by the sea was to live in the Dragon King's territory. As tenants seeking not to anger the landlords, crossing from China to Japan, we encounter a dragon of pure destructive chaos. In ancient Izumo province, a monstrous serpent terrorized the land. Yamata no Orochi had 8 heads and 8 tails, eyes red as winter cherries, a body that stretched across 8 valleys and 8 hills, and moss and trees growing on its back. Each year, it demanded a maiden as sacrifice, having already devoured 7 sisters from one family. When the storm god Susanoo was exiled from heaven for his violent behavior, he encountered an elderly couple weeping for their last daughter, Kushanadaheim, who was to be sacrificed next. Susanoo promised to save her in exchange for her hand in marriage. He devised a plan. He had 8 platforms built, each holding a vat of strong sake, Japan's rice wine. When Orochi arrived, all 8 heads drank from the 8 vats simultaneously. The serpent became roaring drunk and collapsed into sleep. As the beast slept, Susanoo attacked, dismembering it head by head. When he cut the tail, his sword struck something hard hidden within. The legendary blade Kusanagi no Tsurugi, grass-cutting sword, one of Japan's 3 imperial regalia. The sword had been hidden within the serpent's body, or perhaps formed from its essence. Susanoo presented the blade to the sun goddess Amaterasu as apology for his earlier offenses, and it eventually passed to Japan's imperial line. Orochi represented the untamed forces of nature and the chaos that preceded imperial order. Its 8 heads symbolized flooding rivers, as the He River in Izumo Prefecture has 8 major tributaries that historically caused devastating floods. Susanoo's defeat of Orochi symbolized civilization's triumph over natural disaster, the taming of wild rivers through irrigation and flood control. The discovery of Kusanagi within the serpent suggests that from chaos comes order, from destruction comes creation, from the monster comes the sword that protects the nation. Ryujin, also called Oatatsumi, was the dragon god ruling all oceans surrounding Japan. He lived in Ryugujo, an underwater palace made of red and white coral, where time flowed differently than in the world above. He controlled the tides using 2 magical jewels, the Kanju, which caused tides to rise, and the Manju, which caused them to ebb. These tide jewels gave Ryujin absolute power over all coastal activities. His body was that of a massive dragon, scales shimmering with every color of the sea, but he could take human form when dealing with mortals. His daughter, Toyotamahime, married the hunter Hori after he visited the underwater palace seeking a lost fishhook. Their grandson would become Japan's first emperor, Jimmu, making the imperial line descendants of the dragon god himself. This divine ancestry legitimized imperial rule, connecting earthly power to oceanic divine authority. The most famous tale of Ryugujo involves the fisherman Urashima Taro. He rescued a turtle from tormentors, not knowing it was Ryujin's daughter in disguise. As reward, she brought him to the underwater palace, where he lived in paradise for what seemed like 3 days. The palace was built from precious materials, with each room representing a different season. Time, food, entertainment, all were perfect and endless. When Urashima grew homesick, the princess gave him a tamate bako, a jeweled box, with strict instructions never to open it. Upon returning to his village, he discovered 300 years had passed. Everyone he knew was dead. His house was gone. His name survived only in ancient legends. In despair, he opened the forbidden box. White smoke emerged, and Urashima instantly aged 300 years, becoming an ancient man who crumbled to dust. Ryujin embodied the ocean's dual nature, giver of abundance and taker of lives, beautiful and terrible, eternal and patient. The sea provides fish and trade, but also storms and drowning. Time moves differently on the ocean. Sailors depart young and return old, if they return at all. The underwater palace represents the temptation to abandon responsibilities, to live in pleasure and forget duty. Ryujin is generous but dangerous, his gifts always carrying hidden prices. These are the dragons of epic poetry and heroic saga, the great beasts whose defeat defines legends. They are not cosmic forces or divine beings, but individual monsters, unique opponents who test heroes to their limits. Their stories are told and retold, refined over centuries, becoming the templates for how dragons should behave, how heroes should face them, and what victory costs. Not all dragons were born monsters. Fáfnir began as a dwarf, son of King Hreidmr. When Loki killed Fafnir's brother Otter in otter form, the gods paid Wergild with cursed gold stolen from the dwarf Andvari, who placed a doom upon it. The treasure would bring death to all who possessed it. Hreidmr accepted the gold, but the curse immediately took hold. Consumed by greed, Fafnir murdered his father for the hoard, then betrayed his brother Regin, stealing the entire treasure. He crawled to the desolate heath called Níðhöggr and laid himself upon the gold. The curse's magic worked through his body, transforming him physically into his true inner nature. The dwarf dissolved, replaced by a massive serpent dragon. His scales became harder than iron. His breath turned to poison that killed plants and animals for miles. He grew so large, his body created valleys in the heath where he slithered. Fafnir's transformation was complete. The dwarf was gone, replaced by a monster whose only thoughts were of gold. He could no longer use the treasure, only guard it. He couldn't spend it, craft with it, or trade it. He could only lie upon it in his cave, counting it obsessively, breathing poison that kept all other life away. The curse had turned treasure into prison and greed into physical form. The hero Sigurd, urged by the smith Regin, Fafnir's betrayed brother, dug a pit in Fafnir's path to his watering hole. When the dragon crawled over it, Sigurd stabbed upward through the heart with the reforged sword Gram. As Fafnir died, he retained enough intelligence to speak, warning Sigurd that the gold was cursed and would destroy him as it had destroyed the dwarf. Regin told Sigurd to roast and eat Fafnir's heart to gain wisdom. As Sigurd cooked it, hot blood touched his finger, and he licked it reflexively. Tasting dragon blood gave him the ability to understand birds' speech. He overheard birds discussing how Regin planned to betray and kill him to claim the treasure. Sigurd preemptively killed Regin and took the cursed gold for himself. The gold's curse followed Sigurd through the remainder of his short life, bringing tragedy to all who touched it. His story became the Völsunga saga and inspired Wagner's Ring Cycle. Fafnir's tale is the archetypal dragon story of the West. Greed transforms man into monster, treasure becomes curse, and gold is worth more than life itself, but poisons everything it touches. Greek mythology's greatest monster was Typhon, last child of Gaia the Earth, born to challenge Zeus's Olympian rule. His size was cosmic. His head touched the stars. His arms could span from eastern to western horizons. And in place of legs, he had massive serpent coils that filled valleys when he moved. Instead of fingers, he had 100 dragon heads sprouting from his hands, each spitting fire and speaking in terrible voices. His eyes blazed with fire. His 100 dragon heads breathed flame, and his voice could imitate any sound from divine speech to animal cries to the screaming of storm winds. When Typhon marched on Olympus, the gods fled in terror to Egypt, transforming into animals to hide. Only Zeus stood firm, his pride and duty as king forcing him to face the monster alone. Their battle shook the cosmos. Typhon's fire breath melted mountains into lava flows. Zeus hurled thunderbolts that scarred the earth with massive craters. The Mediterranean boiled from their combat's heat. In their first clash, Typhon won decisively, severing Zeus's sinews and imprisoning him in a cave. The king of gods was reduced to a helpless invalid, unable to move. Hermes and Pan recovered the sinews, secretly entering the cave and restoring Zeus's strength. The battle resumed with renewed ferocity. Zeus pursued Typhon across seas and continents, finally cornering him in Sicily. Zeus lifted Mount Etna entire and buried the monster beneath it. Typhon's rage causes the mountain's volcanic eruptions to this day. His fire breath emerges as lava. His thrashing causes earthquakes. His roars are heard as the mountain's rumblings. Typhon fathered an entire dynasty of monsters with the she-dragon Echidna, the Lernaean Hydra, Cerberus the three-headed hound, the Chimera, the Sphinx, and the Nemean lion. His children became the opponents that defined Greek heroes. Heracles, Bellerophon, Oedipus, all faced Typhon's offspring. The father of monsters created the obstacles that made mortals into legends. Typhon represents the forces of nature that civilization must continually suppress. He is wild nature itself. Volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, all given serpentine form. His defeat is temporary, as his breath still burns beneath Sicily. He can never be killed, only buried, only contained. He waits in his prison, and occasionally the mountain reminds humanity that he still lives. Python was an earth dragon born from Gaia, guardian of the oracle at Delphi, when it belonged to the earth goddess and her daughter Themis. Massive and serpentine, it dwelled in a cave on Mount Parnassus, spreading terror through the region. Some accounts claim Python was born from the mud left after the great flood that nearly destroyed humanity. A monster spawned from the earth's trauma. When the twins Apollo and Artemis were born, the jealous Hera sent Python to kill the infant gods and their mother Leto. Python hunted them across Greece, but they escaped. Apollo never forgot. When he reached young adulthood, he hunted Python to Delphi, tracking it through Greece as it had once tracked his mother. At Parnassus, he found the serpent coiled in its cave. Apollo slew Python with his silver arrows, the sun god's light piercing the chthonic darkness. His arrows were said to number in the hundreds, the dragon's massive body requiring many killing shots before it finally died. As Python expired, its body fell into the cave's chasm, and Apollo claimed the oracle for himself. The priestess of his oracle was thereafter called the Pythia, forever honoring the serpent he had destroyed. But Python was Gaia's child, and killing it was a crime against the earth. As penance, Apollo had to establish the Pythian Games, athletic competitions held at Delphi every 4 years, second in importance only to the Olympics. The games honored Python's memory, acknowledging that even in death, the serpent deserved respect. Apollo also had to undergo purification, spending time in servitude to cleanse himself of the murder. Python represents the old chthonic order that the Olympians replaced, the primal earth worship supplanted by the new sky gods. The oracle originally spoke for Gaia. After Python's death, it spoke for Apollo. This transition from earth goddess to sun god mirrors the historical shift from matriarchal to patriarchal religious structures in ancient Greece. Python's death was necessary for Olympian dominance, but was also a crime, a violation of the old ways that demanded acknowledgement even in victory. In the Garden of the Hesperides at the western edge of the world, beyond the sunset, grew a tree bearing golden apples that granted immortality. Guarding them was Ladon, a dragon with 100 heads, each speaking a different language simultaneously. This many-headed serpent coiled around the tree's trunk, ever watchful, never sleeping. The creature was possibly the offspring of Typhon and Echidna, or perhaps spawned from Gaia herself to guard her gift to Hera. Hera herself placed the dragon there after discovering the Hesperides, nymph daughters of Atlas, were eating the apples. She trusted no one else to protect her most precious treasure. The creature's 100 voices created a maddening cacophony that drove intruders insane before they could reach the tree. Each head spoke a different tongue, the languages of gods, beasts, and ancient peoples long dead. The combined sound was said to be beautiful and terrible simultaneously, a choir of chaos. Only Heracles, in his 11th labor, succeeded in taking the apples. The labor was meant to be impossible. In some versions, Heracles killed Ladon with poisoned arrows, the same arrows dipped in the Lernaean Hydra's venom. He shot all 100 heads, his arrows never missing. The dragon's death was agonizing, its 100 mouths screaming in 100 different languages. In other versions, Heracles avoided killing Ladon entirely, using cleverness instead. He convinced Atlas to fetch the apples, while Heracles held up the sky in Atlas's place. Atlas, eager to be free of his burden, agreed. The Titan walked into the garden, and Ladon, recognizing its master's father, allowed him to pass. Atlas retrieved the apples, but then tried to trick Heracles into holding the sky permanently. Heracles outwitted him, asking Atlas to briefly take the sky back while he adjusted his cloak. When Atlas complied, Heracles grabbed the apples and left him to his eternal punishment. Regardless of the version, Ladon's story ends in death or failure. Hera, mourning her faithful guardian, placed him among the stars as the constellation Draco, where he guards the celestial pole for eternity. Every night, Draco coils around Polaris, the cosmic tree, still performing his duty even in death. The dragon failed to protect Hera's treasure, but earned immortality of a different kind, forever visible in the heavens. In the swamps of Lerna in the Peloponnese lurked the Hydra, offspring of Typhon and Echidna, a serpentine dragon with multiple heads, most commonly 9. Its breath and blood were so poisonous that even its scent could kill. The mere smell of its lair caused people to faint and die. Its primary head was immortal, unable to be killed by any mortal weapon, while the others were mortal, but possessed horrifying regenerative ability. The Hydra possessed a defense that made it nearly invincible. When one mortal head was cut off, two would grow in its place. This meant attacking it conventionally only made it stronger. Each successful blow against it doubled its danger. The monster dwelled in a spring beneath a plane tree, emerging at night to ravage the countryside, killing livestock and travelers. Heracles faced it in his second labor, ordered by King Eurystheus to destroy the creature. Heracles covered his mouth and nose with cloth against the poisonous fumes and drove the Hydra from its lair with flaming arrows. As it emerged, he engaged it in battle, severing head after head with his sword. But for each head he cut, two more sprouted from the stump, and the Hydra grew from 9 heads to 10, then 12, then 16. Realizing the futility of his approach, Heracles called his nephew Iolaus for assistance. They devised a new strategy. Iolaus brought torches and cauterized each neck stump immediately after Heracles severed the head, preventing regeneration. Working in coordination, they systematically destroyed the mortal heads. The immortal central head remained. No blade could kill it, no fire could burn it. Heracles solved this with brute force. He cut off the immortal head and buried it under a massive boulder, trapping it alive beneath tons of stone. The head still lives there, hissing and snapping in the darkness, unable to die, but unable to harm anyone. Heracles dipped his arrows in the Hydra's blood, creating weapons of unstoppable poison. These arrows would factor into many later myths, including his own death. When the centaur Nessus assaulted Heracles' wife, Heracles shot him with a Hydra blood arrow. The dying Nessus tricked the wife into collecting his blood, claiming it was a love potion. Years later, when she feared Heracles' affection was waning, she applied the potion to his shirt. The Hydra's poison burned through his skin, causing agony so intense that Heracles built his own funeral pyre and burned himself alive to escape it. The Hydra represents problems that multiply when confronted incorrectly, threats that grow stronger through conventional opposition. It teaches that some challenges cannot be solved with straightforward force, but require adaptability, cleverness, and teamwork. The Hydra is also the weapon that kills the hero who defeated it, a reminder that victory's tools can become instruments of doom. From Greek swamps to Russian steppes, we encounter Smaug, the archetypal dragon of the Bylany Russian epic poems. His name meant serpent, son of the mountains. He had 3 heads, sometimes as many as 12, each breathing fire. Green scales armored his massive serpentine body, and leathery wings carried him across Russia's vast expanses. He made his lair in the Saracen mountains, where he hoarded treasure and terrorized villages. His favorite prey was young women, whom he captured and dragged to his cave. The dragon's connection to water and mountains marked him as a force of wild nature beyond civilization's reach. When he flew, his wings created storms. When he roared, avalanches cascaded down mountainsides. His fire breath could melt armor and reduce wooden villages to ash in minutes. When Prince Vladimir of Kiev's niece, Zabava Pudyatishna, was kidnapped, the hero Dobrynya Nikitich hunted Smaug Goranich for 3 days and nights. Their battle was apocalyptic, scorching the earth, the dragon's fire breath against the hero's magical sword. Dobrynya severed all 3 heads, but they would regenerate unless the stumps were immediately burned. The dragon's blood was acidic, burning through Dobrynya's armor. Using a magical whip given by his mother, Dobrynya finally destroyed the dragon permanently. The whip had been blessed by monks and could prevent regeneration. Each head he removed stayed removed. When all 3 heads lay severed on the ground, Smaug Goranich's body convulsed and collapsed, dead at last. But in some tales, Smaug Goranich could be negotiated with. Unlike purely evil Western dragons, Smaug possessed intelligence and could be tricked, bargained with, or even befriended temporarily. This reflects Slavic ambiguity about supernatural beings, the recognition that even monsters might have understandable motivations. Smaug Goranich embodied foreign invasion, particularly the Mongol threat that devastated Rus. His 3 heads represented the 3 major Mongol hordes. His fire was the burning of cities. His defeat symbolized Russian resistance against the Golden Horde. When Bylani were sung in villages, Smaug Goranich was the enemy every listener recognized, the external threat that must be defeated to preserve the homeland. Tolkien's Smaug in The Hobbit synthesized a millennium of dragon tradition into literature's most fully realized dragon character. He was the last great fire drake of the Third Age, descended from the dragons Morgoth bred in the First Age. When dwarves discovered the Lonely Mountain and its treasures, they prospered for generations, their wealth growing legendary. This prosperity attracted Smaug. He descended from the north without warning, a moving mountain of red golden scales and fire. In a single day, he killed most of the dwarves, scattered the rest, and destroyed the nearby human city of Dale with his flame. He conquered the Lonely Mountain, claiming all its treasure as his own. For 150 years, he lived alone in the treasure hoard, counting it obsessively, memorizing every coin and jewel. When Bilbo Baggins entered his lair, Smaug was a nightmare made real. Massive beyond measure, covered in scales like armor, with a waistcoat of jewels stuck to his belly from lying on the hoard for decades. He spoke with cruel intelligence, playing psychological games with Bilbo, trying to determine how the hobbit had entered and what his purpose was. Dragons are naturally suspicious, and Smaug knew that Bilbo's presence meant the dwarves were planning something. Smaug had one vulnerable spot on his left breast where a scale had been dislodged years ago during battle. His jeweled belly armor didn't extend to this area. Bilbo reported this weakness to the dwarves. When Thorin's company attacked the mountain, Smaug flew to Lake Town in fury, destroying it with fire. The human archer bard, using the last black arrow and guided by a thrush who had overheard Bilbo, struck the precise weak spot. Smaug fell from the sky, his body crushing buildings. Smaug embodied greed and the corrupting power of wealth. His name derived from the Germanic smuggen, to squeeze through a hole, referencing Bilbo squeezing into the mountain. But Tolkien also gave him personality, vanity about his impenetrable armor, cruelty in his enjoyment of psychological torture, dark humor in his conversations, and terrible loneliness. He spent 150 years talking to himself in the dark, counting his treasure over and over, with no companionship, no purpose beyond possession. He is both terrifying monster and tragic figure, a being whose existence has been reduced to obsessive hoarding. He cannot use the treasure, only guard it. He doesn't need it, yet he would burn the world before surrendering a single coin. Smaug set the template for modern fantasy dragons, intelligent, speaking, psychologically complex, tragic in their obsession, and absolutely devastating in their power. Not all dragons hunt. Many serve as eternal sentinels, guardians of sacred places, holy treasures, and forbidden knowledge. They test worthiness, grant boons to heroes who pass their trials, and punish those who fail. These dragons blur the line between monster and divine servant, between enemy and necessary obstacle on the hero's journey. The unnamed dragon in Beowulf is perhaps literature's first fully developed dragon character, establishing tropes that persist today. For 300 years, it slept coiled around its treasure hoard in a burial mound, an ancient barrow containing the wealth of a fallen kingdom. The dragon wasn't the original owner. Long ago, the last survivor of a forgotten people buried his tribe's treasure, then died himself. The dragon, drawn by gold scent, claimed the empty barrow and the ownerless treasure. When a slave, fleeing punishment, stumbled into the barrow and stole a single golden cup to appease his master, the dragon awoke in fury. It emerged at night, flying across the Jiddish countryside, burning every building with its fire breath. Farms, villages, halls, all reduced to ash. The dragon operated on pure principle. Theft demands vengeance. It didn't care about the cup's monetary value. The violation mattered, the intrusion into its hoard, the disrespect. King Beowulf, now aged and long past his youth as a monster slayer, took up arms for a final battle. He was over 70 years old, a king defending his people against a threat only he was experienced enough to face. The dragon was massive, 50 feet long, armored in scales harder than iron. Its fire breath could melt shields and cook men in their armor. Its claws could tear through stone. Beowulf's companions fled in terror, except young Wiglaf, who stayed loyal. Together, they killed the beast, but not before the dragon's bite delivered mortal venom. Beowulf died viewing the treasure he'd won for his people, satisfied that his final act was securing their prosperity. His companions, however, recognized the truth. The treasure was cursed, having brought doom to its original owners, and now to their king. After Beowulf's funeral, the Geats reburied the treasure with him, returning it to the earth where it belonged. The dragon's motivation was purely retributive. Theft demands vengeance. It had no interest in eating people or conquering kingdoms, only in punishing violation of its hoard. It didn't use the treasure, couldn't spend it, didn't even look at it regularly. The gold existed only to be guarded, possession for its own sake. This possessive, treasure-hoarding dragon became the template for Western dragons for a millennium. Before Smaug, before any winged dragon in Middle-earth, Morgoth, the Dark Lord, created Glorung, the first of all dragons. Unlike his winged descendants, Glorung was a wingless fire drake, a massive serpent that crawled on 4 legs like a lizard, burning the earth beneath him as he moved. But what he lacked in flight, he possessed in malice and cunning. Glorung had a weapon beyond fire. His eyes held a hypnotic power that could bind minds, erase memories, and implant false beliefs. He used this dark sorcery to devastating effect against the hero Tirin and his sister Níðhöggr. When Níðhöggr approached the dragon to learn news of her brother, Glorung caught her in his gaze and erased her memories entirely, reducing her to a mindless state. She was found by Tirin, who didn't recognize his sister with her memories gone. She didn't recognize him. They fell in love and married, living happily until Tirin went to slay Glorung. He succeeded, crawling beneath a bridge and stabbing upward into the dragon's unarmored belly with his black sword Gurthang. As Glorung died, he retained enough power for a final cruelty. He lifted his spell on Níðhöggr. Her memories flooded back instantly. She remembered everything, who she was, who Tirin was, what they had done. The horror drove her to immediate suicide, throwing herself into a river. When Tirin learned the truth, he too committed suicide, falling on his own sword. This psychological warfare made Glorung more terrifying than mere physical monsters. He was intelligent, cruel, and took pleasure in tormenting his victims before killing them. He spoke with eloquence and used words as weapons as deadly as his flames. He preferred breaking spirits to burning bodies. Glorung proved dragons didn't need wings to be nightmares. Intelligence and malice were far more dangerous. In Tolkien's First Age, Morgoth bred dragons as weapons of war in his fortress of Angband. Over centuries, he perfected them, each generation larger and more terrible. The greatest of these was Ankalagan the Black, whose name meant rushing jaws. When the hosts of the Valor, the gods themselves, came from the Undying Lands to overthrow Morgoth in the War of Wrath, he unleashed his final weapon. Ankalagan led a fleet of winged fire drakes from Angband's gates. His size defied comprehension. When he flew, his shadow covered entire armies. His fire breath was not a stream, but a cataract, a waterfall of flame that could melt stone and boil rivers. The Valor's armies faltered before him. No mortal or elf could stand against such power. Only Eärendil the Mariner, sailing his flying ship Vingalot through the sky with a Silmaril mounted on his brow, could face Ankalagan. For an entire day, They battled in the air above Thangorodrim. Their combat was visible from all corners of Middle-earth, a star-like ship weaving through fire and smoke, pursued by wings of shadow. When Eärendil finally struck the killing blow, Ankalagan fell from the sky. His body crashed upon the triple-peaked mountains of Thangorodrim and shattered them completely. These were mountains Morgoth had raised as fortifications, volcanic peaks of incredible size, and a single dragon's corpse destroyed them. The impact created earthquakes felt across the continent. His fall broke Morgoth's power, and the Dark Lord was captured and cast into the void. Ankalagan represented the pinnacle of destructive power in Tolkien's world. He was a creature of such immensity that the earth itself could not withstand his death. He was defeated not by ground forces, but by a demigod sailing a ship through the sky with a divine jewel, requiring intervention at the highest cosmic level to overcome. Ankalagan set the standard for fantasy dragons as forces of geological scale, beings whose very existence threatened the world's stability, moving from individual legendary dragons to entire races of serpent beings. We encounter traditions where dragons are not unique monsters, but entire species, hierarchies, and civilizations. These are the Nāgas of India, the divine serpents who dwell beneath the earth, in the waters, and sometimes among humans in disguise. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, Nāgas are a race of serpent beings, sometimes depicted with human upper bodies and serpent lower bodies, sometimes as great hooded cobras, sometimes able to assume fully human form. They are neither purely good nor purely evil, but complex entities with their own societies, rivalries, loves, and wars. They dwell in Patala, the underworld realm, in magnificent cities made of gems and precious metals. Their palaces rival those of the gods in splendor. They also inhabit bodies of water, rivers, lakes, wells, and particularly springs. A Nāga claiming a water source as its home must be respected, or the water turns poisonous or dries up entirely. Some Nāgas are benevolent allies of the gods. Vasuki, the king of Nāgas, allowed gods and demons to use his body as rope to churn the cosmic ocean of milk, creating Amrit, the nectar of immortality. The process was agonizing for Vasuki, poison dripping from his mouths, but he endured for the sake of cosmic order. His brother Shesha, also called Ananta, is the cosmic serpent with 1,000 heads who serves as Vishnu's bed, floating on the cosmic ocean. When Shesha yawns, earthquakes occur. At the end of each cosmic cycle, Shesha's fire destroys the world, allowing it to be recreated. Other Nāgas are antagonists. Kalia, a black serpent with multiple heads, poisoned the Yamuna River, killing anyone who drank from it or bathed in it. The child Krishna defeated Kalia by dancing on its multiple heads until it submitted, then spared it on condition it leave the river and never return. Kalia agreed, relocating to the ocean. Nāgas control water, weather, and fertility. They guard treasures, both material wealth and sacred knowledge. Humans who disrespect them suffer disease, drought, and snake bites. Those who honor them receive blessings, rain in drought, healing of illnesses, protection from snake bites, and sometimes esoteric knowledge. Many royal dynasties claimed Naga ancestry. The Pallava dynasty of southern India traced their lineage to a Brahmin who married a Naga princess. This divine heritage legitimized their rule and explained their prosperity. The connection between rulers and Nagas mirrors the Chinese emperor-dragon relationship. Earthly power derived from serpent divinity. In Vedic mythology, before Indra became king of gods, the world suffered under Vritra, an enormous serpent dragon who coiled around the cosmic mountain and withheld all the world's waters. Rivers stopped flowing, rain ceased, drought consumed the earth. Plants died, animals died, humans died of thirst. Vritra was born from the sage Tivashter's rage after Indra killed his son. The serpent embodied obstruction, the blocking of natural flow, the antithesis of life itself. Vritra was invincible to conventional weapons. Swords broke against his scales. Arrows bounced off harmlessly. Fire couldn't burn him. Indra tried everything and failed. The gods and sages gathered to create a weapon beyond mortality. They created the Vajra, the thunderbolt, from the bones of the sage Dadhiji, who sacrificed himself willingly. His bones contained such spiritual power that they could harm even the invincible. Armed with this indestructible weapon, Indra confronted Vritra at the cosmic mountain. Their battle shook the three worlds, heaven, earth, and the underworld. Mountains crumbled from the force of their blows. The sky turned dark with storm clouds summoned by their fury. For days they fought, neither gaining advantage. Finally, Indra struck the death blow with Vajra. The thunderbolt pierced Vritra's coils, and the serpent's massive body split open. All the imprisoned waters burst forth in a great flood. Rivers flowed again, rain returned, and life was restored. The waters rushed across the dried earth, and green things grew once more. But Indra's victory came with a cost. Killing Vritra, even a monster, was still killing, and the guilt of murder weakened Indra. He had to perform penance and was plagued by nightmares of the serpent for years. This moral complexity distinguishes Vedic mythology. Even necessary violence leaves scars. Even righteous killing is still killing. Vritra represents the fundamental obstacle to existence, the cosmic constipation that must be destroyed for life to flourish. He is drought personified, the absence of water in a land where water is survival. His defeat is celebrated in hymns and prayers, but he is also acknowledged as a worthy opponent whose death was tragic, even though necessary. Not all Nāgas are antagonists. Mukalinda, king of the Nāgas, protected Buddha during his enlightenment. When Siddhartha Gautama sat beneath the Bodhi tree, meditating toward enlightenment, he entered a state of such deep concentration that he was unaware of the physical world. A massive storm arose, rain pouring down in torrents that could have drowned a distracted man. Mukalinda from his underground realm, drawn by the spiritual power emanating from the soon-to-be Buddha. The Naga king spread his 7 cobra hoods over Buddha's head, sheltering him from the rain. For 7 days and nights, Mukalinda stood guard as Buddha meditated, not moving, not eating, maintaining his protection until the storm passed and enlightenment was achieved. When Buddha emerged from meditation, Mukalinda transformed into human form and bowed before him, becoming one of Buddhism's earliest protectors. This story establishes Nāgas as guardians of Dharma, spiritual law. Across Buddhist Asia, Nāgas are seen as protectors of sacred texts, temples, and practitioners. Mukalinda represents the serpent's potential for benevolence, the recognition that power can protect as well as destroy. He asks nothing in return for his service, acting from pure compassion. His image appears across Buddhist art, the meditating Buddha sheltered beneath cobra hoods, the meeting of enlightenment and earthly power, wisdom protected by strength. From Asia to Mesoamerica, where serpents shed their scales for feathers and became gods of wind, rain, and wisdom. These are the most benevolent of all dragon traditions, serpents who brought civilization rather than destroyed it, who taught rather than hoarded, who uplifted humanity rather than preyed upon it. Quetzalcoatl, whose name means feathered serpent in Nahuatl, was one of Mesoamerica's most important deities, worshipped by the Aztecs, Maya, Toltecs, and earlier civilizations. His form united opposites, the serpent representing earth and water, the Quetzal bird's brilliant green feathers representing sky and freedom. He was simultaneously dragon, god, culture hero, planet Venus, and historical priest king. As creator deity, Quetzalcoatl descended to Mictlan, the underworld ruled by the death god Mictlantecuhtli. He retrieved the bones of previous humanity, which had been destroyed in prior world ages. He shed his own blood on the bones, mixing divine essence with ancient remains, creating the current human race. Humanity exists because Quetzalcoatl was willing to bleed. He taught humans agriculture, showing them how to cultivate maize, the sacred crop that became Mesoamerican civilization's foundation. He gave them mathematics, astronomy, and the calendar systems that could predict eclipses and track Venus's movements. He taught them crafts, weaving, metalworking, stonecutting, and the arts. He was the civilizer, the bringer of culture from barbarism. Quetzalcoatl opposed human sacrifice, preferring offerings of butterflies, flowers, and song. This put him at odds with Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror god, who favored blood sacrifice. Tezcatlipoca tricked Quetzalcoatl into drinking pulque, sacred alcoholic beverage made from agave. While drunk, Quetzalcoatl committed sins that shamed him terribly. In his shame and guilt, Quetzalcoatl departed. He built a raft of serpents and sailed east across the Gulf of Mexico, promising to return in the year 1 read of the Aztec calendar. This prophecy would have devastating consequences. When Hernán Cortés arrived in 1519, it was a 1 read year, Some Aztecs initially believed Cortés was the returning Quetzalcoatl, hesitation that contributed to the empire's fall. Quetzalcoatl's twin aspect, Xolotl, the dog-headed god, guided the sun through the underworld each night, ensuring it would rise again. This pairing of feathered serpent and dog represented the duality of existence, life and death, day and night, ascending and descending. As the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl embodied enlightenment and wisdom rather than destruction. His serpent body was earthbound knowledge, his feathers the ability to transcend material limitations. He represents the best humans can become: wise, creative, compassionate, ascending from earthly brutality to celestial grace. The Maya equivalent of Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan ruled as both deity and historical king, the boundary between them deliberately blurred. His massive pyramid at Chichen Itza demonstrates astronomical precision that still amazes. During spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun creates the illusion of a serpent of shadow descending the pyramid stairs, 7 triangles of light forming the body, the carved serpent head at the base becoming animated. This serpent connects heaven to earth, demonstrating Kukulkan's role as intermediary between gods and humanity. The Popol Vuh, the Maya creation epic, describes the feathered serpent as one of the heart of sky deities who created the world through thought and speech alone. They spoke the word earth, and land rose from primordial waters. They spoke mountain, and peaks thrust upward. They spoke tree, and forests grew. Creation by word mirrors the Christian "let there be light," but predates European contact by millennia. Kukulkan taught the Maya to track Venus's cycles and predict eclipses. The Maya calendar, capable of calculating dates millions of years into past and future, was partially attributed to his teaching. He showed them how to build their great cities with pyramid temples aligned to celestial events. He revealed the properties of cacao, jade, and obsidian. Like Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan could take human form, but his true nature was serpentine. His scales gleamed with iridescent feathers that shifted color like the resplendent Quetzal bird. His wings allowed him to travel between the 3 cosmic realms: heaven, earth, and underworld. He demanded wisdom rather than blood, knowledge rather than death, though later rulers would corrupt his worship with sacrifice. The Spanish conquest destroyed most Maya codices, books containing advanced astronomical knowledge, mathematical theories, and historical records. Only 4 survived. The feathered serpent's wisdom was deliberately burned by conquistadors and priests who saw it as demonic. Thousands of years of accumulated knowledge vanished in flames, one of history's greatest intellectual catastrophes. From cosmic creators and divine serpents, we descend to the local dragons of medieval Europe, creatures more immediate and visceral. These are the worms and wyverns that haunted specific regions, the unique monsters that required unique heroes, and the dragons that became symbols of cities, nations, and saints. Wyverns are often confused with true dragons, but differ in crucial ways. While dragons have 4 legs and 2 wings, wyverns have only 2 legs and 2 wings. Their front limbs evolved into wing structures like bats or pterosaurs. They are smaller than true dragons, typically the size of horses or cattle rather than buildings. This makes them dangerous, but not apocalyptic, deadly, but not world-ending. Wyverns appear across European heraldry, representing strength and protection on coats of arms from England to Poland. They lack dragon's intelligence and cannot speak, operating on animal instinct rather than cunning. Their breath is poisonous rather than fiery, exhaling clouds of toxic gas that cause vomiting, blindness, and suffocation. Their tails often bear barbed stingers filled with venom potent enough to kill a horse. In English folklore, wyverns infested swamps and moorlands, preying on livestock and unwary travelers. The wyvern of Jörmungandr in Essex terrorized the countryside, killing sheep and cattle, until a knight named Sir George Marney slew it. The creature's venomous nature made even its corpse dangerous. The ground where it fell remained poisoned for years, nothing growing there, a permanent scar on the landscape. Wyverns represent a middle ground between dragons and mundane predators, dangerous but killable by skilled warriors without divine aid. They populate medieval bestiaries as real creatures, like lions or bears, rather than mythological impossibilities. Medieval Europeans believed wyverns actually existed in remote regions, occasionally flying from distant lands to raid civilized areas. The lindworm or linorm of Scandinavian and Germanic folklore is a wingless, legless dragon, essentially a gigantic serpent with a dragon's head. The name derives from Old Norse linormr, meaning serpent dragon. These creatures dwelled in burial mounds, guarding treasure of dead kings, or sometimes in deep forests where they created enormous coils around entire groves. Unlike the cosmic threats of Jörmungandr or Níðhöggr, lindworms were local menaces, terrorizing specific regions rather than threatening worlds. The Gesta Danorum tells of King Frotho slaying a gigantic lindworm that had killed his father. The creature was so massive that, when it coiled around itself, it created a hill. Its scales were impenetrable except at the throat, the only vulnerable spot. In Swedish folklore, the lindworm was often the result of a curse or magical accident. One tale tells of a queen who desperately wanted children and was given 2 flowers by a witch, told to eat only one. Driven by impatience, she ate both and gave birth to twins, a normal prince and a massive serpent. The lindworm demanded a bride, devouring every girl brought to it. Finally, a clever peasant girl accepted the challenge. She wore multiple dresses, one over another. When brought before the lindworm, she commanded it to shed a skin for each dress she removed. The serpent complied, stripping layer after layer until it was vulnerable and raw. She then beat it with whips soaked in lye, breaking the curse and transforming it into a handsome prince who had been trapped inside the serpent form. This tale type appears across northern Europe. The dragon as cursed human rather than pure monster, capable of redemption through the right combination of courage and cleverness. Lindworms represent transformation and hidden nature. The idea that monstrosity might be a shell concealing humanity, or that humanity might conceal monstrosity. Perhaps the most famous dragon in Western Christianity, St. George's dragon, terrorized the city of Cyrene in Libya. It poisoned the countryside with its breath, killing crops and animals. When livestock sacrifices no longer satisfied it, the dragon demanded humans, chosen by lottery. Each day, a citizen was selected to be devoured. The king tried to exempt his daughter Sabra, but the people demanded fairness. When her name was drawn, she resigned herself to death. George, a Roman soldier and Christian knight, arrived as she awaited the dragon outside the city walls. When the beast emerged from its lair, George made the sign of the cross and charged on horseback. His lance, blessed by faith, pierced the dragon's shoulder. The creature roared and thrashed, but could not harm him. George placed the princess's girdle around the dragon's neck like a leash, and the wounded beast followed docilely into the city. George promised to kill it if the citizens converted to Christianity. 15,000 were baptized that day. George then beheaded the dragon in the city square, its blood running through the streets. King Cyrene built a church on the spot where it died, and from the dragon's blood sprang a spring with healing waters. The tale is pure hagiography. The dragon is paganism, sin, and Satan himself. George represents militant Christianity conquering the old faiths. His image of knight and speared dragon became Europe's archetypal dragon-slaying scene, reproduced in thousands of paintings and sculptures. St. George became England's patron saint, his red cross on white background the national symbol. The dragon's transformation from terror to docile follower represents conversion. The pagan world, once tamed by Christianity, becomes obedient and harmless. Its death is necessary and public, demonstrating faith's power. The story spread across Christian Europe, adapted to local contexts, becoming a template for saint versus dragon narratives. In Provençal legend, the Tarasque terrorized the region around Níðhöggr, France. It was a hybrid horror, the body of an ox covered in a turtle's shell, 6 short legs like a bear's, the tail of a serpent ending in a scorpion stinger, a lion's head, and ears like horses. It emerged from the Rhone River to kill travelers and sink boats with its acidic breath that dissolved wood and flesh. Knights who challenged it died horribly, their armor melted, their bodies dissolved. The creature was invincible to weapons, its shell impenetrable, its strength overwhelming. It seemed unkillable, a permanent plague on the region. The locals lived in terror, avoiding the river, abandoning settlements nearest the monster's hunting grounds. Saint Martha arrived, hearing of their suffering. She found the monster in the forest, resting after feeding. Instead of attacking, she approached peacefully, singing hymns and prayers, displaying her cross. Tarrasque, confronted with pure faith, was tamed instantly. The monster's ferocity vanished. It followed her into town like a dog, docile and harmless. The terrified villagers, seeing the monster that had killed so many, attacked it with spears and stones. Martha pleaded for mercy, but they killed it anyway, beating it to death in the streets. Repentant afterward, they renamed their town Tarascan in the dragon's honor. Martha blessed them and continued her travels. The Tarrasque is a Christianization myth, the dragon representing pagan beliefs, subdued by faith. Interestingly, the dragon became a sympathetic figure in later tellings, an innocent animal slaughtered by mob violence despite Martha's attempts to save it. This evolution shows shifting attitudes, from monster deserving death to misunderstood creature killed by fear. Tarascan still celebrates the Tarrasque annually with a festival featuring a giant dragon effigy paraded through streets. The monster that once symbolized terror became civic pride, a unique mascot honored rather than feared. Beneath Wall Hill in Krakow, a dragon once terrorized Poland. Smaug Walski demanded weekly tribute of cattle, 6 cows delivered to his cave. When the king failed to provide, the dragon began devouring people, burning farms, destroying villages. Knights attempted to slay it and died in flames, their swords useless against its scales, their courage meaningless against its fire. The king promised his daughter's hand and half his kingdom to whoever killed the beast. Knights from across Europe attempted the challenge. All failed. The dragon's cave filled with their bones and melted armor. Finally, a poor cobbler's apprentice named Scuba accepted, not through strength, but through cleverness. He prepared a lamb carcass stuffed with sulfur and tar, sewing it closed. He left it outside the cave at dawn. The dragon, emerging hungry, devoured it greedily. The sulfur ignited inside its belly, creating unbearable burning thirst. The dragon ran to the Vistula River and began drinking. It drank and drank, unable to quench the internal fire. It drank until its belly swelled enormously. Still it drank, the water sloshing inside, mixing with sulfur. Finally, the dragon exploded in a massive blast, body parts raining across Krakow. Scuba married the princess and became a hero. The dragon's cave beneath Wall Castle remains a tourist site today, and a dragon statue outside breathes real fire every few minutes, controlled by a button visitors can press. The legend demonstrates Polish folk wisdom. Brain defeats brawn. The clever commoner succeeds where knights fail. The dragon isn't defeated through superior force, but through understanding its nature and exploiting its greed. In Albanian mythology, Hydra was a female dragon or serpent demon that brought drought and required human sacrifice. She wasn't born as a dragon, but underwent transformation. She began as a small serpent, but over many years, she grew horns, wings, multiple heads, and immense power. The longer she lived, the more monstrous she became. She lived in caves, guarded treasure, and most importantly, poisoned water sources. Lakes and rivers would turn toxic at her touch. During droughts, villagers knew Kulshidra was withholding rain, her power over water absolute. To end the drought, they would offer sacrifices. Young women left outside her cave, livestock driven into her lair. Only when appeased would she release the rain. Her nemesis was the Drang, a semi-human dragon warrior with wings who battled Kulshidra in the sky. When storm clouds clashed and thunder roared, Albanians knew the Drang and Kulshidra were fighting. If the Drang won, rain came and crops grew. If Kulshidra won, drought continued and people starved. A Drang was born from a child with a call or a person who died heroically defending others. These warriors lived normal human lives, but when needed, their spirits could transform and fly to battle dragons. They were Albania's supernatural protectors, champions arising in times of crisis. This dualistic system of dragon versus dragon warrior reflects ancient Albanian beliefs about cosmic balance. Evil cannot be permanently destroyed, only temporarily defeated. The battle is eternal, each generation producing new Drang to face the ever-present Kulshidra. Humanity survives not through final victory, but through continuous struggle. Romanian folklore's Balor was a multi-headed dragon, typically with 3, 7, or 12 heads, but always in multiples of 3. Unlike Western dragons, Balor often appeared legless, more serpentine, though some versions had legs and wings. It had fins like a fish running down its spine, walked on all fours when legged, and breathed both fire and poison clouds. Balor were intelligent, could speak human languages, and often demanded tribute from kingdoms. They would descend on a region and declare themselves its ruler, demanding weekly sacrifices of livestock and yearly tributes of gold. Kingdoms that refused were burned to ash. Those that complied survived, but lived under the dragon's tyranny. In the tale of Fat Frumos, the handsome youth, the prince hero, must rescue a princess from a 12-headed Balor. The dragon has imprisoned her in a castle surrounded by impassable thorns. Each head must be severed, but they regenerate faster than the hero can cut. He discovers he must cut all 12 heads with a single sword strike, an impossible task requiring a magical blade. He seeks the legendary smith Georg, who forges a sword sharp enough to cut through 12 necks simultaneously. Armed with this blade, Fat Frumos returns and decapitates all 12 heads with one swing. The dragon collapses, and the princess is freed. The tale emphasizes that impossible challenges require impossible solutions, that cleverness in finding the right tool matters as much as courage. Balor represented Ottoman oppression in Romanian symbolism, the multi-headed monster squeezing the life from the Romanian people. Each head was a different aspect of foreign rule: taxation, military occupation, religious persecution, forced labor. Heroes who defeated Balor became symbols of national liberation, the promise that tyranny could be overthrown. The Zilint is the symbol of Kazan, capital of Tatarstan, appearing on the city's coat of arms. This dragon has a unique appearance, a wyvern-like body with 2 legs, wings, and a serpentine tail, but crowned with a golden crown. The crown signifies sovereignty, the dragon as legitimate ruler rather than chaotic monster. According to legend, the area where Kazan now stands was infested with serpents and dragons. When settlers came, a witch told them to build a bonfire on a hill and burn all the snakes. They did so, and thousands of serpents perished in the flames, their ashes covering the ground. But one enormous dragon escaped, diving into a lake. This survivor was Zilint. The dragon alternated between protecting the city and demanding tribute. When enemies threatened Kazan, Zilint would emerge and drive them away with fire and fury. But when angered by disrespect, he would flood the city or withhold his protection, allowing invasions to succeed. Some versions claim a hero eventually slayed him. Others say he still sleeps beneath Kazan, waking only when the city faces existential threats. The Zilint represents Tatarstan's complex heritage, blending Turkic, Mongol, and Slavic mythological elements. Its crowned head signifies sovereignty and legitimacy, the dragon as symbol of state power rather than chaos. Unlike European dragons that must be destroyed, Zilint is integrated into civic identity, appearing on everything from government buildings to sports team logos. The dragon is Kazan, and Kazan is the dragon, an inseparable unity of place and protector. The red dragon on Wales's flag has ancient mythological roots. Why Níðhöggr, the red dragon, appears in the Mabinogion and the prophecies of Méodin Merlin. The most famous tale involves King Vortigern attempting to build a fortress. Each night, his construction collapsed. His wizards told him to sacrifice a fatherless boy on the site to appease the spirits. The boy brought before him was Méodin, who revealed the truth. Beneath the foundation, 2 dragons battled eternally, a red dragon representing the Britons and a white dragon representing the invading Saxons. When workers excavated, they found an underground lake, and from it emerged the 2 dragons, who immediately resumed their eternal battle. The red and white dragons fought with terrible fury, fire, and blood, each wounding the other grievously. The white dragon initially dominated, driving the red dragon back. But Méodin prophesied that the red dragon would eventually triumph, driving the white dragon from the land and reclaiming Britain for the Britons. This became a symbol of Welsh resistance against English conquest. The red dragon represented Welsh identity, resilience, and the promise of future victory. Geoffrey of Monmouth expanded this tale in his Historia Regum Britanniae, cementing the red dragon as Wales's eternal symbol. During battles, Welsh armies carried red dragon banners, the creature's image giving them courage. Unlike treasure-hoarding dragons, Níðhöggr hoarded nothing but pride and the determination of the Welsh people. It wasn't a monster, but a national guardian, a symbol of identity and resistance. The dragon didn't need to be slain because it was never evil, only fierce in defense of its land. Wales remains the only nation with a dragon on its flag, the creature so central to identity that removing it would be unthinkable. On the cliffs above the Mississippi River near Alton, Illinois, the Alini people painted a massive pictograph of a creature called the Pyasa. Father Jacques Marquette described it in 1673. Large as a calf, with horns like a deer, red eyes glowing like coals, a bearded face, a scaly body, a long tail wrapped around its body, ending in a fish's fin, and talons like an eagle. According to Alini legend, the Pyasa was a bird dragon that descended from the cliffs to snatch warriors and carry them away to devour. It grew fat on human flesh until hundreds had been killed. No warrior could defeat it. Arrows bounced off its scales. Spears broke against its hide. The creature seemed invincible, a permanent plague on the Alini nation. Chief Watoga devised a desperate plan. He stood in the open as bait, while 20 warriors hid nearby with arrows. When the Pyasa swooped down to snatch him, they fired simultaneously. The combined volley pierced the creature's wings and body. It crashed to the ground, and warriors rushed forward to finish it with spears and stone axes. The Pyasa's death was commemorated with the cliff painting, a warning and memorial. The original pictograph was destroyed by quarrying in the 1800s, but replicas exist based on Marquette's description and later accounts. The Pyasa represents one of few dragon-like creatures in Native American mythology, which more commonly features serpents or thunderbirds. Its cliff-dwelling nature and preference for snatching victims mirrors European dragons, but its bird-like qualities align with Native American sky spirits. Some scholars debate whether the creature was purely mythological or based on misidentified animals like large eagles or descriptions of pterosaur fossils found in the region. The Mississippi River Valley contains rich fossil deposits, and Native Americans certainly encountered and interpreted these remains. We return to the cradle of civilization, where humanity's oldest dragon myths were carved in cuneiform and painted on glazed bricks. These are the dragons that predated Greece and Rome, the serpents of Babylon and Persia, creatures whose stories influenced all later dragon traditions. On the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, built by Nebuchadnezzar II around 600 BCE, a repeating image appears in brilliant blue glazed bricks. The Mu Eshachak letter 1 E2B U Eshachak U, whose name means furious snake. This dragon had the scaled body and neck of a snake, the head of a dragon with a single horn, the front legs of a lion with feline paws, and the hind legs of an eagle or bird of prey with massive talons. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered with iridescence. The Mu Eshachak letter 1 E2B U Eshachak U was the sacred animal of Marduk, chief god of Babylon, given to him after he slayed Tiamat and created the universe from her corpse. The creature appears to have been considered a real animal by by the Babylonians, depicted alongside actual animals like lions and aurochs, rather than purely mythological beings. This suggests Babylonians believed such creatures actually existed, perhaps in distant lands. The biblical book of Daniel mentions the dragon of Babylon, which Daniel killed by feeding it pitch, fat, and hair that expanded in its stomach, causing it to burst. This was likely a Mu, S-hatchek letter 1E2b, U-S-hatchek, S-hatchek U kept in Marduk's temple as a living proof of the god's power. Ancient accounts describe priests feeding and maintaining this temple dragon. When Alexander the Great conquered Babylon in 331 BCE, Greek sources mention encountering this creature. The Mu, S-hatchek letter 1E2b U, S-hatchek, S-hatchek US composite nature, blending serpent, lion, and bird, mirrors the chimeric nature of many ancient Near Eastern monsters, representing the combination of most feared predators into a single ultimate threat. It was simultaneously guardian, symbol of divine power, and possibly actual animal, the boundary between myth and reality, deliberately kept ambiguous. In Persian and Central Asian mythology, the Ajdaha is a massive dragon with multiple heads, serpentine body, and sometimes wings. The name appears in Zoroastrian texts as agents of Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit opposing the creator god Ahura Mazda. These dragons were not animals, but embodiments of chaos and corruption, supernatural evils that must be defeated for order to exist. The most famous Ajdaha appears in the Shahnameh, Persia's epic poem written by Ferdowsi. The dragon Zahak was actually a man, a prince corrupted by the devil Ahriman. The devil kissed Zahak's shoulders, and from each kiss, a serpent grew. These serpents had mouths of their own and demanded to be fed. They required human brains daily. Zahak's viziers procured 2 young people each day to be killed, their brains fed to the shoulder serpents. Zahak overthrew the righteous King Jamshid and ruled Persia as a tyrant for 1,000 years, his reign sustained by daily human sacrifice. The people suffered, but were too terrified to rebel. Finally, the hero Feridun rose up. He was born with a divine blessing, destined to end Zahak's tyranny. Feridun forged a magical mace shaped like a cow's head and confronted the Dragon King. Their battle shook the heavens. Feridun struck Zahak with his mace, shattering the serpents on his shoulders. But he could not kill Zahak entirely. An angel appeared and warned that killing him would release plagues and demons from his body. Instead, Feridun chained Zahak inside Mount Damavand, Iran's highest peak, where he remains to this day, imprisoned but alive, destined to break free at the end of time to bring the final apocalypse before being destroyed forever. Another famous Persian Ajdaha appears when the hero Rostam faces a 7-headed dragon. The dragon lives in a forest and emerges at night to devour travelers. Rostam camps nearby, and his miraculous horse Raksh wakes him twice as the dragon approaches. On the 3rd attempt, they fight together. Rostam severs all 7 heads, while Raksh tramples the body. The dragon's blood is so acidic it burns the ground, creating a wasteland. Persian dragons are fewer than in other traditions, but uniformly massive, representing tyranny, corruption, and the perversion of natural order. Their defeat isn't just physical, but moral good triumphing over fundamental evil. They are obstacles to righteous rule, and their destruction allows Persian civilization to flourish. Finally, we encounter the dragons that defy easy categorization, creatures unique to specific cultures, embodying concepts found nowhere else. These are the outliers, the dragons that show the incredible diversity of the serpent archetype across humanity. In ancient Philippine mythology, the world was once illuminated by 7 moons that brought eternal light. But Baccanawa, a massive sea serpent, became envious of their beauty. It had a mouth the size of a lake, whiskers reaching into the clouds, and looped gills through which entire ships could pass. The creature was jealous and vain, coveting what it could never possess. One by one, Baccanawa rose from the ocean depths and swallowed the moons. The first vanished into its gullet, and darkness fell across part of the world. People screamed and wept, but the serpent ignored them. It waited, then rose again to swallow the second moon, then the third, then the fourth, fifth, and sixth. After devouring 6 moons, only one remained, and Baccanawa came for it. The supreme deity Bathala intervened. He could not kill Baccanawa, for the serpent was part of creation itself, but he could teach humanity how to defend themselves. When the serpent rose to swallow the last moon, creating what we now call a lunar eclipse, people made noise. They banged pots, drums, gongs, screamed, anything to create deafening sound. The noise frightened Baccanawa, who released the moon and retreated to the depths. This became tradition. When lunar eclipses occurred, villages across the Philippines would create thunderous noise to drive Baccanawa away. The serpent's mouth would release the moon, and light would return. Children were taught that their noise saved the world, that collective action could defeat even cosmic monsters. Some tales claimed Baccanawa once had a sister who transformed into a beautiful moon. The serpent's attempts to swallow the moon were efforts to be reunited with its lost sibling, adding tragic dimension to its monstrous hunger. It didn't want to destroy the moons, but to embrace them, to end its loneliness. This transforms Baccanawa from pure villain to sympathetic figure, a creature whose love manifests as destruction. In Romanian folklore, the Zeburator is a unique and disturbing dragon whose name means the flying one. It appears as a young man of extraordinary beauty, but its true form is that of a dragon or demonic entity wreathed in flames. The Zeburator visits young women at night, particularly those who are unmarried or whose husbands are away for extended periods. It enters through the window and engages in relations with the sleeping woman, who experiences it as an intensely pleasurable dream. She wakes feeling exhausted, but with vivid memories of a handsome lover. Night after night, the Seburator returns, and the woman becomes obsessed with her nocturnal visitor. But the Seburator is parasitic. Each visit drains the woman's life force, leaving her pale, weak, and wasting away. She loses interest in food, work, and earthly relationships, living only for the dragon's nightly visits. She becomes a shadow, consumed by longing for the creature. Her family watches helplessly as she fades. Families recognizing the symptoms would perform cleansing rituals, often involving garlic placed in windows, silver crosses under pillows, and prayers recited at sunset. The Seburator was repelled by garlic's scent and silver's purity. Sometimes a priest would bless the house, driving the entity away through divine authority. If caught early, the woman would recover. If too much life force had been drained, she would waste away and die. The Seburator represents the incubus tradition filtered through Romanian dragon mythology. The dragon as seducer rather than destroyer. It speaks to anxieties about female sexuality, unexplained illnesses, and the dangers of the liminal night hours. Unlike dragons that hoard gold, the Seburator hoarded life essence and sexual energy, a predator of a different kind entirely. Vietnamese fishermen tell of Con Rit, the millipede, a massive sea dragon of the South China Sea. Unlike mythological dragons, Con Rit may be based on actual sightings. In 1883, a carcass washed ashore near Han Khoi. A segmented creature over 60 feet long with armor plates and multiple legs along its body. Locals described it as a sea dragon, something between a centipede and a serpent. The body decomposed before scientists could examine it, leaving only descriptions and sketches. Con Rit was described as having a centipede-like body with armored segments, each segment bearing 2 legs that it used to walk along the ocean floor. Its head resembled a dragon's with whiskers and large eyes. It lived in the deep ocean and surfaced only occasionally, perhaps to feed or mate. Vietnamese tradition holds Con Rit as a real creature, not mythological. Fishermen claim to have seen it swimming beneath their boats, its segmented body undulating through the water. Some cryptozoologists suggest Con Rit might be a large oarfish misidentified due to decomposition, or an unknown species of crustacean or arthropod scaled to enormous size. Unlike the divine dragons of Chinese tradition, Con Rit is a beast, a predator dangerous but not supernatural. It represents the mystery of the ocean depths and the possibility that unknown large animals still inhabit remote waters. Vietnamese folklore treats it as zoology rather than mythology, something that exists rather than something that symbolizes. This pragmatic approach to dragons, treating them as undiscovered animals rather than cosmic forces, distinguishes Vietnamese tradition from neighbors. In Turkic and Mongolian mythology, Yelbeghin is a massive serpent dragon with magical powers, particularly the ability to shapeshift. It often appears as a beautiful woman to lure heroes into traps. Its true form is that of a multi-headed serpent, sometimes with wings, sometimes without. The creature guards treasures and sacred places, challenging heroes who seek them. In the Epic of Alpamish, the hero must defeat a Jörmungandr to rescue his beloved and claim a magical horse. The dragon tests him with riddles. If he answers correctly, he may pass. If he fails, he becomes her meal. It creates illusions, making him see armies where none exist, making him doubt his own senses. It challenges him to physical combat, its many heads striking from all directions. Alpamish succeeds through combination of strength, cleverness, and divine assistance. The horse he seeks to claim gives him advice, teaching him the dragon's weaknesses. The riddles require knowledge of ancient lore, which Alpamish possesses from his education. The illusions require strong will to see through, which his training provides. The physical combat requires his legendary strength, but also timing and strategy. Jörmungandr dragons are often neutral rather than purely evil, serving as guardians and testers rather than wanton destroyers. This reflects Central Asian shamanic beliefs, where spirits and monsters exist in moral gray areas, neither wholly good nor wholly evil. The dragon's shape-shifting ability connects it to shamanic transformation traditions, the idea that powerful beings can alter their physical form at will. That reality is more fluid than it appears. Defeating a Jörmungandr isn't just about strength, but about seeing through illusions and understanding the true nature of reality beneath appearances. The dragon tests whether a hero is worthy not just of treasure, but of the wisdom required to use it properly. Those who pass become greater than they were. Those who fail are consumed, their inadequacy proven. Níðhöggs were dragons, inhabiting deep pools and pits throughout the English countryside, particularly in Sussex. The Níðhöggr hole in Leominster is a bottomless pool, supposedly housing one such dragon. These dragons were wingless, water-dwelling serpents more akin to lindworms than classical dragons, but with an insatiable appetite that made them uniquely dangerous. The Níðhöggr of Leominster emerged from its hole to devour livestock, villagers, and anything else it encountered. The creature's hunger was supernatural, never satisfied no matter how much it consumed. The King of Sussex promised his daughter and half his kingdom to whoever slew it. Knights from across England attempted the challenge. All failed, dragged into the bottomless pool to drown. A local farmer's boy named Jim Polk decided to try cleverness instead of strength. He baked an enormous pie, bigger than a cartwheel, filling it with poison. He left it near the Níðhöggr hole. The dragon, smelling the delicious aroma, emerged and devoured the entire pie in one bite. The poison worked slowly. The dragon thrashed, vomiting, and finally collapsed. Jim finished it with an axe while it was weakened. The dragon's body was so massive that oxen couldn't move it. They buried it where it fell, and a gravestone called the Níðhöggr Stone supposedly marks the spot, though modern analysis dates it to a Norman tomb. The name Níðhöggr derives from Old English nicker, meaning water monster, the same root that gives us neck in the Loch Ness Monster's nickname. Knuckers represent local English dragon traditions tied specifically to dangerous water sources. Perhaps mythological explanations for wells and pools that drowned people. In Serbian folklore, while the term Smaug can refer to the destructive multi-headed dragon, it more commonly describes a very different creature, a benevolent dragon protector. The Serbian Smaug is intelligent, can shapeshift into human form, and often serves as guardian of the Serbian people. This represents one of the most positive portrayals of dragons in European folklore. The Smaug possesses the ability to transform into a young man of extraordinary strength and beauty. In this form, he falls in love with mortal women. These relationships are often passionate and tragic, the dragon eventually having to return to his true form. The children born from such unions become great heroes, possessing superhuman strength and a dragon's fiery spirit. Several historical and legendary Serbian figures were claimed to have a Smaug as a father mythological explanation for their exceptional abilities. This benevolent role extends to that of a national protector. The Smaug is a great enemy of the Turks in Serbian epic poetry, a patriotic symbol of resistance against the Ottoman Empire. He is a just and noble king who rules from a distant magical land, but who will fly to the aid of his chosen people in their time of need. He is a bringer of rain and fertility, his passage through the sky a sign of good harvest to come. The Smaug's primary enemy in the cosmological sense is the Allah, a demonic whirlwind creature that brings hail and thunderstorms to destroy crops. The Smaug is the heroic weather spirit who battles the Allah in the sky to protect farmers' fields. When storm clouds clash and lightning flashes, Serbians knew the Smaug was fighting to protect them. This complex portrayal shows how the same word can encompass both destroyer and protector, reflecting the dragon's fundamental ambiguity. The Siraj, depicted on Babylon's Ishtar gate alongside the Mu S# letter 1E2B, U S# U, walked the processional way in brilliant blue glazed bricks. Ancient accounts describe it as a real creature kept in the temple of Bel, fed and maintained by priests. This wasn't symbolic representation, but an actual living animal, according to Babylonian records. When Alexander the Great conquered Babylon in 331 BCE, he reportedly encountered this temple dragon. Greek sources described it as a serpent of unusual size, kept in a sacred chamber and worshipped as proof of Marduk's power. The priests fed it regularly, and its continued health was seen as a sign of the god's favor. The creature's depiction shows remarkable consistency across Babylonian art: a serpentine body with 4 legs, a long neck, a crested head, and a forked tongue. Some scholars suggest it might have been a large monitor lizard, python, or Nile crocodile transported from Egypt. Others propose it was purely symbolic. the persistent belief in its reality, even among Greeks who claim to have seen it, indicates Babylonians successfully maintained the dragon cult into the classical period. Whether the Sirush was mythological symbolism or misidentified fauna remains debated, but its cultural impact was immense, shaping how Mesopotamian civilization understood divine power and sacred animals. The dragon was proof made flesh, the visible manifestation of invisible divine authority. In Korean mythology, not all dragons are born as dragons. The Yamata is a proto-dragon, a giant serpent that aspires to become a true dragon. According to legend, every 1,000 years, a Yamata has the opportunity to ascend to dragonhood by capturing a Yuiju, a magical pearl that falls from heaven. If it succeeds, it transforms into a true dragon and ascends to the heavens. If it fails, it must wait another 1,000 years. Yamata are massive serpents living in deep water or remote mountains. They are intelligent and patient, spending centuries in meditation and self-cultivation, preparing for their moment of transformation. When the Yuiju falls, all Yamata in the region race to claim it. The competition is fierce, sometimes violent. Only one can succeed. An Yamata that captures the pearl undergoes miraculous transformation. Its serpentine body grows legs. Its scales become iridescent, horns sprout from its head, and wings emerge from its back. It gains the ability to control weather, fly through clouds, and command respect from lesser beings. It becomes a true dragon, a yang, and takes its place among the celestial dragons. But an Yamata that fails to capture the pearl faces a grim fate. Some legends say it becomes twisted and malevolent, a Yamata, a dragon that went wrong. These corrupted Yamata prey on humans, bringing floods and disasters, bitter from their failure. They represent potential gone wrong, ambition turned to malice. The Yamata concept represents self-cultivation and transformation, the Buddhist and Taoist ideal that through proper practice, any being can transcend its current state. The dragon is not a fixed category, but a state of enlightenment that must be earned. This philosophical approach to dragons distinguishes Korean tradition, the dragon as aspiration rather than fact. While Níðhöggr is famous, Slavic folklore contains many other dragons under the Gornich family name, each with specific roles. Some Slavic traditions describe Gornich not as a monster, but as a fire-bringer, a being who stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, similar to Prometheus. In this version, Gornich was a benevolent dragon who pitied humans shivering in the cold. He flew to the heavens, stole fire from the god's hearth, and brought it to earth in his mouth. The gods were furious and cursed him to breathe fire forever, his punishment becoming humanity's protection. Every time Gornich breathes, fire emerges, and humans can light their torches from his breath. This alternative tradition shows the complexity of Slavic dragon mythology. The same name encompasses destroyer and benefactor, enemy and ally. Gorinage represents the ambiguity at the heart of dragon myths. Fire both protects and destroys. The dragon both threatens and serves. Power is neither good nor evil, but depends on how it's used. While often conflated, some traditions distinguish the mu eshachek letter 1e2b, u eshachek u from the Sirush as separate creatures, both serving Marduk, but with different roles. The mu eshachek letter 1e2b u eshachek u was Marduk's war beast, the creature he rode into battle, while the Sirush was the temple guardian, the living proof of divine power. The mu eshachek letter 1e2b u eshachek u appears in the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, as a monster created by Tiamat to fight the gods. After Marduk killed Tiamat, he claimed her monsters as his own, taming the mu eshachek letter 1e2b u eshachek u, and making it his mount. This transformation from chaos spawn to divine servant symbolized Marduk's power, his ability to impose order on chaos itself. The creature's composite nature, serpent, lion, and eagle, represented Marduk's dominion over earth, land, and sky. Its presence in Babylonian iconography reinforced the god's supremacy, the visual reminder that all domains bowed to Babylon's patron deity. In Buddhist tradition, Apolala was a Naga king who lived in the Swat River in what is now Pakistan. He was responsible for bringing regular rainfall to ensure good harvests. In exchange, the local farmers would offer him a portion of their crops. This arrangement worked well for generations until farmers grew greedy and stopped making offerings. Apolala, enraged by their disrespect, withheld rain for years, causing devastating drought. Crops failed, people starved, and the region became desperate. When Buddha arrived in the area, he confronted the Dragon King. Apolala attacked with floods and storms, trying to drown Buddha. But Buddha remained serene, unmoved by the dragon's fury. Impressed by Buddha's wisdom and compassion, Apolala ceased his attack and asked to become a disciple. Buddha taught him that revenge through drought only created more suffering, harming innocents who had nothing to do with the original disrespect. Apolala repented, promising to bring regular rains again. In gratitude, the region became strongly Buddhist. This story illustrates Buddhism's approach to dragons. They are not inherently evil, but can be misguided. Through wisdom and compassion, even the angriest dragon can be converted to Dharma. Apolala represents nature's dual capacity for nurturing and destruction, and humanity's need to maintain proper relationships with natural forces. In Persian, Kurdish, and Turkish mythology, Shamaran is a unique dragon figure, the queen of serpents, depicted as a woman from the waist up and a serpent from the waist down. She is extraordinarily beautiful and possesses vast knowledge of medicine, alchemy, and secret wisdom. According to legend, a young man named Thomasp accidentally discovered her underground kingdom while gathering honey. She fell in love with him and shared her knowledge, teaching him the secrets of healing herbs and the nature of the soul. They lived together for years in her subterranean palace, surrounded by serpents who served as her court. Eventually, Tiamat grew homesick and begged to return to the surface. Shenlong, heartbroken, allowed him to leave on the condition he never reveal her location. He swore an oath, then departed. But when the Sultan's vizier fell deathly ill, court physicians declared only Shenlong's flesh could cure him. They tortured Tiamat until he revealed her location. Soldiers captured Shenlong and brought her to the surface. Knowing she would be killed, she instructed them on how to prepare her body. Her head must be boiled for the vizier, which would actually poison him for his treachery. Her midsection for the Sultan, which would grant him wisdom. And her tail for Tiamat, which would grant him her knowledge and immortality as penance for his betrayal, transforming his guilt into purpose. Shenlong represents the dragon as keeper of secret wisdom, specifically feminine wisdom passed from woman to man. Her serpentine nature connects her to ancient earth goddesses, and her sacrifice ensures knowledge survives even when its keeper dies. She is both tragic lover and wise teacher. Her story a reminder that wisdom comes with responsibility, and that breaking oaths carries consequences. In Albanian mythology, the Bala is a serpent that sleeps for the entire year, waking only on St. George's Day. During its sleep, it grows larger and more dangerous. If it sleeps for 12 years without being disturbed, it transforms into the dreaded Hydra, the multi-headed dragon that brings drought. The Bala's preferred sleeping place is often near human settlements, in caves, or under ancient trees. Villagers who discover a sleeping Bala face a terrible choice: wake it and face its immediate wrath, or let it sleep and risk it becoming Hydra. Most choose to let it sleep, hoping it will be killed before reaching 12 years. When awake on St. George's Day, the Bala is disoriented and hungry. It emerges from its lair seeking food, usually livestock. This is the one day it can be killed safely, as its long sleep has left it sluggish. Heroes who slay a Bala are celebrated, having prevented a future Hydra. The Bala represents gradual transformation of threats, the idea that small, ignored dangers become catastrophic over time. It's a warning against complacency. Today's manageable problem becomes tomorrow's disaster if left unaddressed. The 12-year cycle mirrors natural disasters that occur generationally, each generation forgetting the last catastrophe until it happens again. In Chinese mythology, Bash was a giant python capable of swallowing elephants whole. The creature appears in the classic of Mountains and Seas, an ancient Chinese text cataloging mythical geography and creatures. Bash lived in southern regions, terrorizing everything in its path with its impossible size and appetite. The snake was so massive that after swallowing an elephant, it would take 3 years to digest it. During this time, the Bash would sleep, its belly distended grotesquely. When it finally expelled the bones, they formed hills. These bone hills were considered valuable for their medicinal properties, and brave individuals would venture to collect them, risking encountering the waking Bash. The hero Yi, famous for shooting down 9 of the 10 sons, was tasked with killing Bash. He tracked the serpent to its lair and found it sleeping after a meal. He shot it with magical arrows that could pierce any hide. The Bash thrashed in its death throes, its body crushing forests and creating valleys. Its corpse was so massive it took months to rot, and the stench drove people away for miles. Bash represents nature's scale beyond human comprehension. The idea that in distant lands, creatures exist that defy imagination. It's an exaggeration of real pythons, scaled to mythological proportions. The bone hills it creates connect the monster to the landscape. The idea that geography itself might be the remains of ancient titans. Our journey through dragon mythology has taken us across continents and millennia. We've seen serpents that encircle worlds and serpents that guard single springs. We've encountered dragons of absolute evil and dragons of perfect benevolence. We've witnessed dragons that must be slain and dragons that must be worshipped, from Tiamat's corpse becoming creation to Smaug's corpse crushing a city, from Quetzalcoatl teaching civilization to Níðhöggr gnawing civilization's roots. Dragons encompass the full spectrum of human meaning-making. The dragon evolves with each culture that births it anew. In ancient Babylon, it was divine servant and living proof of the gods. In Greece and Rome, it was the monster heroes proved themselves against, the obstacle that created legends. In medieval Europe, it became the devil himself, Christianity's ultimate enemy made flesh and scale. In China, it ascended to divine wisdom, becoming a blessing rather than curse. In modern fantasy, it synthesizes all these roles. Smaug is hoarder and conversationalist, destroyer and tragic figure, magnificent and monstrous simultaneously. What remains constant is the dragon's essential function. It embodies what we cannot control. It is the storm that destroys crops, the flood that drowns villages, the fire that consumes cities, the disease that ravages populations. It is greed that consumes the greedy, pride that brings low the proud, power that corrupts the powerful. It is death waiting at the end of every hero's journey, inevitable and unconquerable. But the dragon is also transformation. Fáfnir shows how greed transforms us into monsters. The Imugi shows how cultivation transforms us into something greater. St. George's dragon shows how faith transforms evil into good. The feathered serpent shows how wisdom elevates us from earth to sky. Every dragon story is a transformation story. Someone or something changing from one state to another. The serpent itself being the ultimate symbol of transformation as it sheds its skin and is reborn. The dragon endures because it is necessary. Civilization requires chaos to define itself against. Heroes require monsters to prove themselves upon. Wisdom requires ignorance to illuminate. Order requires disorder to impose itself upon. The dragon is the eternal other, the perpetual challenge, the question that has no final answer. In the depths of the ocean, Jörmungandr coils still, tail in mouth, waiting for Ragnarök. In the roots of reality, Níðhöggr gnaws eternally, hastening the end. In the clouds above, Shenlong decides whether to send rain or drought. In the heavens, Tianlong guards the gods. In burial mounds across Europe, lindworms sleep on cursed gold. In the swamps of Lerna, the Hydra's blood still poisons the ground. In the mountains of Persia, Zahak strains against his chains. In the temples of India, Nāgas guard sacred wisdom. In the skies of Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl's return is awaited. In our stories, our games, our dreams, dragons fly and breathe fire and hoard treasure, and speak in riddles and test heroes and guard princesses and destroy kingdoms and create worlds. The dragon is eternal because mystery is eternal, because the unknown will always exist beyond the light of our fires, because in the deep places and high places and distant places, something vast and terrible and magnificent dwells. It has always dwelt there. It will always dwell there. As long as humanity tells stories, the dragon will be in them, coiled in the darkness, watching with eyes that see through time itself, waiting for the hero brave enough or foolish enough to seek it out. The serpent's tail remains in its mouth. The circle is unbroken. The dragon endures.